Welcome everyone, thank you for tuning in. You are listening to The Account with today's news report on the war in Ukraine for day 335. Leopard tanks will be sent to Ukraine. More on that in today's segment on the Tanks for Ukraine situation. Ukraine also has started dismissing officials and key figures for alleged corruption. We will take a look at these reports in detail. I have one article I want to point out as well. Otherwise, there were only some minor news, so I grouped them into the usual situation inside Ukraine, the occupied territories, Russia and Belarus, and the international developments. And before we start the report, here is a sad message. A time of unprecedented danger. It is 90 seconds to midnight. The famous Doomsday Clock has been moved 10 seconds forward. Humanity has never come this close to a global catastrophe. And now for a look at the flashpoints along the front. Crimea. Russian sources claim Russian troops managed to recapture the outskirts of Crimea and push Ukraine back several kilometers in the forest south of the settlement. However, no proof of this claim was provided. Instead, most maps and observers have adjusted their assessments showing the forest and parts of the Crimea outskirts as contested. Ukrainian forces are said to be attacking northeast of Dibrova towards the outskirts of Crimea, but also here no proof was provided. Bakhmut. Heavy battles rage in the eastern industrial zone of Bakhmut. Regarding Klishchivka, there are conflicting reports from both sides. A video shared online shows Russian soldiers moving through the old trenches northwest of the settlement before being stopped by heavy artillery and drone attacks. Russia claims great success, while Ukraine claims repelled attacks. We will have to wait for clarification. Ukraine's Western allies have advised Ukraine to switch its focus from Bakhmut to the frontline in Zaporizhzhia, southern Ukraine. And now for the article I want to point out by CNN regarding the tactics of Wagner PMC in Ukraine, titled Deadly and Disposable. Wagner's brutal tactics in Ukraine revealed by intelligence report. CNN journalists have received Ukraine's defense intelligence data on the combat tactics of the Wagner PMC in Ukraine, according to which their effectiveness around Bakhmut is confirmed and the difficulty of confronting Russian militants is indicated. The Ukrainian report, dated December 2022, concludes that Wagner represents a unique threat at close quarters even while suffering extraordinary casualties. It is a fairly long report, so I will not be going into detail. Please give it a read if you're interested. Also, please be advised that some of the report might contain disturbing descriptions of actions taken by Wagner. Reader discretion is advised. Moving on to the latest regarding the Tanks for Ukraine situation. Germany will send Leopard tanks to Ukraine. The announcement was made shortly after 6:30 p.m. today. The official statement will most likely be made tomorrow and will include the approval for other countries to send their Leopard tanks as well. According to the Defense Ministry of Poland, the country has sent an official request to Germany for the re-export of Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine. Norway is considering the possibility of sending 8 of its Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine. Spain, which in summer 2022 was allegedly ready to send about 40 Leopard tanks to Ukraine, but then changed its mind due to their unsatisfactory condition, can repair and modernize these tanks within a month. The Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte said that the Netherlands is considering buying 18 Leopard 2 main battle tanks, which it leases from Germany to provide them to Ukraine. During a joint press conference with Volodymyr Zelensky in Kyiv, the president of Finland, Sauli Niinistö, said his country was ready to start training Ukrainian soldiers on its Leopard 2 tanks. The German company Rheinmetall can transfer 139 Leopard 1 and Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine. The company has 22 Leopard 2A4 tanks that it could refurbish. This would take a little under a year. Another 29 Leopard 2A4s are currently being prepared for the Ringtausch program. These will be ready in April to May 2023. Regarding Leopard 1 tanks, Rheinmetall can provide 88 tanks. Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal reports that the US is starting to lean towards providing Abrams tanks to Ukraine. According to the report, the US may announce the transfer of a significant number of American M1 Abrams tanks to Ukraine as early as this week. The White House refused to openly comment on this information. An unnamed representative of the Pentagon, in a comment to Sky News Arabia, said, US President Joe Biden is ready to send about 10 M1 Abrams tanks to Ukraine in order to influence Germany's decision to hand over Leopard 2 tanks. And to start the news segment, the latest on the dismissal of politicians and key figures in Ukraine. The Cabinet of Ministers has dismissed 6 government officials and also approved the firing of 5 governors in what is described as the most significant reshuffle since the start of the war. The reshuffle came amidst allegations from several sources of alleged misappropriation of money by top officials. The dismissal of the following heads of oblast military administrations is under consideration: Valentin Resnichenko, Dnipropetrovsk; Oleksandr Staruch, Zaporizhia; Oleksiy Kuleba, Kyiv; Dmytro Shivitsky, Sumy; Yaroslav Yanushevich, Kherson. The deputy head of the Office of the President of Ukraine, Kyrylo Tymoshenko, handed in his resignation and was dismissed by President Zelensky. Prosecutor General Andriy Kostin dismissed his deputy Oleksiy Simonenko after he handed in his resignation amidst the corruption scandal. The Deputy Defense Minister Vyacheslav Shapovalov has handed in his resignation amidst the procurement scandal we discussed yesterday. Additionally, the High Anti-Corruption Court of Ukraine has announced the arrest of a suspect in the $400,000 bribe, which led to the dismissal of the Deputy Minister of Infrastructure and Communities Development, Vasyl Lozinsky. The European Union has welcomed the announcements. Battling corruption is one of the key requirements for Ukraine to receive financial aid from the EU and, further down the line, its membership of the Union. And now a look at the minor news updates out of Ukraine. According to Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal, the G7 countries have set up a multi-donor coordination platform, the so-called financial Ramstein. The legal framework and a construction project related to the Bayraktar manufacturing plant in Ukraine have been completed. The plant is expected to start operations within the next 2 years. As stated by Yuri Inat, the spokesman for the Air Force Command, the type of aircraft that will likely be delivered to Ukraine has already been decided. As a reminder, in July 2022, the US authorized the training of Ukrainian pilots on US aircraft. The Security Service of Ukraine arrested a Russian agent who was helping Russia to prepare an attack on Ukrainian energy infrastructure. Meanwhile, Ukrenergo reports that electricity generation has increased, although a significant deficit remains. The Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, General Valery Zaluhnyi, has inherited $1 million from Grigory Stapenets, a Ukrainian American. Zaluhnyi has donated the entire amount to the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Moving on to the situation inside the occupied territories. In its morning report, the General Staff of Ukraine mentioned that Russian authorities have begun to move the families of the 2nd Army Corps of the Russian Armed Forces currently living in the city of Luhansk back to Russia. Russian authorities have explained why they do not plan to rebuild the Azovstal steelworks in Mariupol. Such facilities were appropriate and profitable during the Soviet Union, where they were busy all the time and worked non-stop. Currently, it would be more cost-effective and faster to develop the agricultural base instead. At the same time, the collaborator Kostiantin Ivashchenko has been replaced by Ole Moron as acting mayor of Mariupol. Denis Pushilin, the pro-Kremlin puppet leader of the self-proclaimed DPR, gave the necessary orders. Russian occupation authorities have carried out mass raids in Jankoy, Crimea, primarily targeting the homes of Tatars. 6 men were detained, according to reports. Russian state-owned media agency RIA Novosti reported of a car bomb exploding in Berdiansk. According to information, a car belonging to the local collaborator Valentina Mamai, who helped organize the pseudo-referendum, exploded when she was inside. She suffered severe injuries and is in critical condition in the hospital. The Russian government has signed a decree ordering the creation of 24 penal colonies in the occupied territories. 12 will be in Donetsk, 7 in Luhansk, 3 in Kherson, and 2 in Zaporizhia. The latest news updates from Russia and Belarus. Valery Gerasimov, the chief of the General Staff of the Russian Federation, has complained that the intensity of hostilities in the war in Ukraine has put the occupying Russian troops in conditions that they have not encountered in the history of modern Russia. He said, "It should be noted that our country's mobilization training system has not been fully adapted to the new modern economic relations. Therefore, we had to correct everything on the fly. The Chief of the General Staff has noted that modern Russia has never experienced such a level and intensity of warfare as today. Practically the entire collective West is opposing it. Russia has deployed one additional missile carrier to the Black Sea. According to reports, a submarine was put on combat duty. The total salvo now amounts to up to 28 caliber missiles. During a lengthy speech at a meeting on the socio-political situation and the state of crime in the country, the self-proclaimed president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, has claimed that the West has not abandoned its plans for Belarus. According to him, militants and extremists are being trained in Ukraine. However, Ukrainians are allegedly offering a non-aggression pact to Belarus. Oleh Nikolenko, spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, stated that Ukraine has no aggressive intentions towards Belarus and the country should not be drawn into the war by Russia. The Belaruski Ayun project reports that at least 6 factories in Belarus are producing so-called dragon's teeth for Russia. At the factories in Gomel Oblast alone, between 20 and 30,000 of these anti-tank obstacles were ordered. According to information obtained by the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, Russia's space intelligence system is suffering drastically under the Western-imposed sanctions. Project deadlines had to be moved back by years due to the lack of foreign-made electronics. And to end the news segment, the international developments. The Swedish government has approved the transfer of materials by the state-owned grid operator Svenska Kraftnät that can be used to restore Ukraine's power system. Switzerland has decided to stop blocking the supply of weapons to Ukraine and will allow European countries to transfer Swiss-made weapons to Kyiv. And now for the intelligence report segment, starting as usual with the UK Ministry of Defense. General Colonel Mikhail Teplinsky has likely been dismissed as one of Russia's key operational commanders in Ukraine. Teplinsky was the officer on the ground in charge of Russia's relatively successful withdrawal from west of the Dnipro in November 2022, and he has received praise in Russia as a capable and pragmatic commander. It remains unclear whether Teplinsky still retains his additional remit as head of the VDV, Russia's airborne forces. There is a realistic possibility that debate over the tasks VDV has been given has contributed to his dismissal. VDV has often been employed in ground-holding roles traditionally given to the mechanized infantry. Teplinsky's dismissal is likely another sign of continued division within the senior hierarchy of Russia's operation as General Valery Gerasimov attempts to impose his personal authority on the campaign. Moving on to the latest assessment by the Institute for the Study of War. According to the researchers, preparation for a looming Russian offensive can be observed, which most likely will start in the coming month. The Institute further reports on Russian tries to deepen military and economic relations with Iran, especially focusing on banking, energy, and commodity trading sectors in the face of American sanctions. The scientists further discuss the increasing impact the recruitment of convicts has on the combat abilities of the Wagner PMC. Using the convicts as cannon fodder while trying to preserve its highly trained, long-serving mercenaries likely undermines the Wagner PMC's ability to retain and use its mass of untrained convicts. Additionally, the Institute refuted Russian claims about the seizure of new areas in the Zaporizhia Oblast. At the time of publication of the report, there is also no evidence in open sources to support the propagandists' claims, the Institute noted. And to wrap up the report, the evening update by the General Staff of Ukraine. The enemy continues to conduct offensive actions in the Bakhmut direction, suffering numerous losses. In the Liman and Avdiivka directions, the enemy conducted unsuccessful offensive actions, all enemy attacks were repulsed. The Russian occupiers are defending in the Kupiansk, Novopavlivka, Zaporizhia and Kherson directions. In the Volyn, Poliske, Siversk and Sloboshansk directions, the situation has not changed significantly and no offensive groups of the enemy have been detected. In the temporarily occupied territories of the Ukrainian Crimea, the Russian Federation continues covert mobilization measures at the expense of local residents, citizens of Ukraine. In particular, in the city of Sevastopol from January 20, 2023, Russian military commissariats have been assigned the task of replenishing Russia's losses in the so-called special military operation at the expense of local civilians from units of the Black Sea Fleet. All civilian employees are required to fill out forms where they must indicate information about their military rank in reserve and the presence of a driver's license. The Russian occupiers continue to suffer colossal losses in the battles with the defense forces of Ukraine. More than 450 wounded occupiers are being treated in the city hospital of the occupied city of Dniprorudne, Zaporizhia region. Vasilivska District Hospital of Zaporizhia region is also full of wounded Russian occupiers. And with that, the report is finished. In case you want to check up on any of the articles, you can find the links in the descriptions as usual. Thank you for taking the time to tune in, and have a great day. You were listening to The Account. Slava Ukraini.